And welcome into Pressbox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me is my co-host Ross Grimsley, and our guest tonight is Matt Blood. And Matt, thank you for doing the show with us tonight. But before we grab you and start talking to you, I got to tell folks that Pressbox Live is brought to you by C3 American Exteriors. Go to their website at c3america.com to get a brand new roof for just the cost of your insurance deductible. I introduced Matt Blood. I will tell you that he is the Orioles Director of Player Development. And Matt, I can't think of a better place to start than asking you what the heck you did from March of last year until now. The world is topsy-turvy, but how did you develop players during the pandemic where so many of them weren't at the alternate site or playing for the big league club?
Great question. And guys, thanks for having me. It's good to be here. We first, when it first happened, it was kind of a shock. Like, okay, what do we do? And we all got together, and fortunately, we have an incredible staff of creative minds and innovative thinkers. And we got to work pretty quickly on what can we do to still be productive this year and make the most of it. And so we created different programs to offer to the players throughout the year. And those would be more groupish type programs. And a lot of that was education based. But then we also had call lists and coaches that were responsible for specific players, and talking with them, staying in touch with them on the specific areas that they're working on, on a daily basis. The big challenge in this environment is not every player is privy to the same resources. So some players are fortunate enough to have other talented players around them that they can practice with or against, compete against, and facilities which they can use, where other players aren't quite as fortunate and they're more on their own with less resources and have to get even more creative. So it was really an individualized thing that was heavy strength and condition focused, as well as do what you can with the resources that you have, as well as use technology to keep in touch with us and allow us to stay on top of what you're doing. So that was on the individual side. On the team side, we had book clubs and team dinners and Zoom meetings on all sorts of different topics to keep everyone engaged and try to build some of this culture. Because you have to understand, like we just hired basically a brand new coaching staff that year.
Yep.
So while by no means am I saying that the coronavirus was a good thing, because it's been devastating for the country, but from our perspective, we found an opportunity to take advantage of this time to get our staff fully onboarded and to build and create resources and infrastructure that we may not have been able to do if we didn't have some of this free time. So it's been a really productive year. 2020 was a highly productive year for us in the department because of the unique circumstances.
Do you think when we look back on this 5 years from now, we'll go back and say, boy, and I don't want to point at any one player or a couple, but boy, they might have been great players, but they lost that year of development. Do you think that's a possibility, that some players will be damaged by the season lost and the fact that this year the minor leagues might start later as well?
I hope not. I mean, first of all, it was pretty much the same for everyone.
Yep.
I mean, there were groups of players that did get to participate in the alternate side and did get to participate in our instructional league. So there was somewhat of an advantage there. But if I had to think about it, maybe some of the older players that are kind of in that window of time where they're having to launch themselves into prospect status or not, maybe. But I'd like to think that we and they did the best they could to stay up to where everyone else is, if not do better than they did.
Ross, you go ahead with a couple.
Yeah, Matt, we talked a little bit about the Orioles got involved in the international market, signing some players. And I know we also talked about spring training. They say it's a go. You don't really know. Obviously the rules, you don't even know the rules yet, what they're going to be. But as far as international, the players that you have very young players that you sign. I think one kid, a catcher, was 19. These kids, a lot of people don't know what happens with these kids when they're drafted. Do they come to the complex in Sarasota? Do they stay in the Dominican or their home country? What do these players, these young kids do? Where do they go?
Well, you said 19. I mean, most of them are probably 16.
Right, 16 or 17. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have our academy there in the Dominican, which is where their first set foot will be there, and we'll have a staff there. And when we open it up, hopefully here sometime soon, we'll start running waves of players through there for some training opportunities, and that'll be their first taste, to the Orioles player development.
Right.
And we'll have our staffs there, and we'll be introducing them to our culture there and to our way of practicing and getting to know them. So that starts right away.
Right.
And they will make their way over to the United States once they've cleared a couple hurdles in terms of ability and maturity wise.
Right.
And for some, that may be age 17,
Right.
18, in that range typically. And, it's going to be pretty cool to see more and more Latin players start mixing their way in with the American players that we have. Is going to be a real shot in the arm for our
Right.
system.
The other question, and we talked briefly about it, is the new draft league that's coming into play for the college draftable players. It starts right after the College World Series, I believe. My question is, one of the questions is, is this going to be like the fall league? Is this going to be like maybe the Hawaiian league, where you send some of your Orioles staff members over there or to that particular facility or whatever? The other thing is the players. I mean, probably your higher projected draft players, what is the benefit of them going to that?
Well, think about the Cape Cod League. That's similar. I think.
Right.
I think it's a similar model, and so what it is, I think it's an opportunity for these players to play against high level of competition in a sort of a professional style manner. And, in doing that, they'll get better as players, and they'll also get exposed to scouts and teams. And through that, it gives them a better chance to get drafted higher and, get into a system and ideally work towards becoming a major leaguer. So I think it's just an opportunity to better develop and expose amateur baseball players towards the professional side eventually.
Right. Well, those kids that are drafted, will they go back into that league?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. That's all right.
Will those kids that are drafted,
yeah,
will they have the opportunity to go back in that league, or will they even would the organization that drafted them want them to go back, or will they go directly to the facility of that drafting team?
Good question. I don't know the league well enough, but I would imagine that once we sign a player, once he's signed, he's gonna come into our system. Now if it's a draft and follow type of, old school draft and follow situation where you draft him and you want to watch him play before you sign him, or you're negotiating, maybe I could see that being the case.
Right.
But once we sign him, he's going to come down to Sarasota, and we're gonna put him to work.
just want to remind you.
There's a lot of unanswered questions. I know, it's crazy.
Just want to remind folks that are tuning in on Facebook Live or watching this, We're talking to Matt Blood, Director of Player Development for the Baltimore Orioles. Matt, I wanted to ask you a question. You obviously have had a long-term relationship with Mike Elias and Sig Maydal. So they knew you, you knew them. Do you all share sort of the way you want to teach players to play baseball? Or do you leave that up to coaches? And how does that get passed down to the coaches you hire, how you want them to teach playing baseball? Because Mike Elias mentioned when he hired you that you had an unparalleled, let me see, Matt has an unrivaled network when it comes to identifying up and coming coaching talent. So that's a side of this, is the actual teachers. You know who they are.
Yeah. Wow, great question. You know, Sig and Mike and I think first met back in 2009 when I was hired with the St. Louis Cardinals, and you know, we've known each other since. And Sig and I have been fortunate enough to live in a similar location for many years, and spend a lot of time just talking and sharing of ideas. And he and I have had a lot of conversations about this, about development and philosophies and all these things. And to make it real simple, I mean, it comes down to deliberate practice and growth mindset. Like those are really kind of the overarching themes of what we are about. And so we look for coaches that have those things and use those characteristics in their daily work, right? So deliberate practice, what does that mean? You know, it's essentially like having real goals as well as ways to give feedback um, and show the players of what are we working on and is it working, and what are our strategies to get you to where we want you to go, right? And I know that that's really really overall simplification, but when you look for coaches that are doing this, it's, from my perspective, it's pretty obvious. And so I don't know, like Mike was very nice to say that about the Rolodex or whatever, but really it's a mindset, you know, that I'm interested in finding it. And I believe that Mike and Sig are on the same page. I think all three of us are on the same page about that mindset that we're looking for.
Is part of the process with young players today, the guys like Sig who really understand the advanced analytics, and I'm sure you have a pretty darn good view, understanding of them yourself, is important that the players understand those things? And is that part of your process of developing them so they have an appreciation for that, Matt?
What I think is important is the players understand why you're doing what you're doing. Like that's what I think it's very, we are not going to hide information from players. And I think players are smart, and I think players want to be helped, and they want to get better. And we are going to provide them with the information to show them that this is why you need to work on X. And
it helps to get the buy-in from the player if he's being honestly communicated to.
Correct. And then from there, you can deliberately practice because you know what it is that we're striving to improve and why we're striving to improve it. And then is it getting better? Right. And so, yeah, absolutely. Now, do we have to get into the fine details of, you know, the algorithms and whatnot? No, absolutely not. But we can show them what matters and where they fall in those areas and say, okay, let's go to work.
If you have this high spin rate, you're going to get more ground balls or you're going to miss more bats. It's pretty simple if it's proven that it does work. Ross.
Yeah, but no, Matt, let me ask you a question. And this is something that, you know, my last year, I coached 31 years. My last year was 2014. From this time till now, a lot of former players that were coaches, managers, successful players and successful coaches, they're no longer, how do I put it? wanted in this day and age? Is there a particular, because I know, I mean, we did analytics with a pencil and a piece of paper and a ruler. You know, I learned it from Weaver. We did it. Obviously, it wasn't in depth, but it seems like that the player, ex-player, some Hall of Fame guys, and I'll tell you a story. 2 Hall of Famers I talked to that I know very well. They were told that the organization didn't want them speaking to the players about baseball, which I find absolutely bizarre. But what is the older old school guys? They're not wanted in the game anymore, or what's the story
Yeah.
there? Can you explain that?
I find that sad. I mean, I that's not how I feel. I mean, I very much respect and appreciate the experience from all people who have played or coached in this industry. I mean, I believe that it's an extremely difficult thing to do, and there's a lot that's learned and gained from that. And so the overarching theme of they're not wanted or they don't have value, in my opinion, is false. But there's a side where you have to also be willing to have an open mind of learning whatever it is that is coming in or that is a part of the process. And ideally, like a lot of the highest value people that you could get would be someone who has incredible experience in the game, as well as the growth mindset and the willingness to constantly be learning whatever it is that's out there and applying that to what you already know, and then continuing to improve, you know, your ability as a coach. And I think what happened was there was this wave of people that started to learn how to more accurately coach using technology and using data and using, to be honest, like scientifically proven methods of skill acquisition and practice design. And this is something that we're really big on. I didn't do a good job of explaining it earlier, but like skill acquisition and practice design is a huge thing for actual transfer of skill. And there are people out there that are deliberately studying this and have put it into practice wherever they are, and they've developed these skills that make them highly effective coaches and practice designers. And when you butt up against that, then there's a problem, right? Versus saying, wow, like this could really help me, let me learn as much of it as I can, and then go and do it. So I think there's a little bit of that dynamic. And so I very much appreciate the people who are constantly learning, even though maybe they were Hall of Fame baseball players, but they still have this attitude of, okay, I played Major League Baseball, I'm in the Hall of Fame, but I still have so much to learn, right? And that person, like, give me that person every day of the week. You know what I mean?
Right,
so
exactly.
So I hear exactly what you're saying, and I want you to know it's not about that. Like, it's not about, oh no, like this person has a lot of experience, we don't want them. Absolutely.
Right. The only reason I asked that is because, you know, I would go down to the Oriole games back when I was coaching, and when I started doing the pregame for the Orioles in 2015, and I would go in the clubhouses of the visiting team where I knew most of the guys, a lot of guys on different teams, and that was a comment that was made with some guys, you know, and not everyone, but still it was, you know, and then being around guys at different functions I'd go to, that would come out. More and more guys were being let go. And I know these guys are even some of the guys on the teams, the coaches, the managers, the players say, no one asks me anything. No one comes to me with any and I have all this plethora of information and they don't want it. They're not willing to go and ask. And you kind of go, God, these players are missing out some vital information that would make them better players, and they don't even know it. That's what I was getting at. But and no, you're absolutely right. You got to blend the two. And I think once that happens, you're going to get better players. But both sides have to work at that.
Matt, go ahead.
It's a constant. It should be a mindset of constant growth, of constant learning.
Exactly.
And that's where I think there's been some rub in the past. But I honestly think though that it's going to stop. I think that trend is going to get less because I think more people understand, and I agree with you. Like, I just want to say that I agree with you. Like, there's a ton of value to the experience that these players and people that have been in the game such a long time, and I have such respect for them.
We're talking to Matt Blood, and Matt, I know we're limited time, so I just want to get to a couple names and sort of get a sense of where you think they'll be this year. These are the names that Baltimore baseball fans are really excited about. Adley Rutschman, where do you think if the season starts reasonably on time, is he a AA candidate to start the season with a shot to play AAA this year?
All right, so I'm going to give you a disclosure. I mean, a little disclaimer. I'm going to be somewhat vague because we don't quite know. I mean, we missed most of this season. I'm guessing some of the names you're going to ask me, we haven't really seen play a whole lot.
All right.
So, I'm not exactly sure. But Adley, I would guess more in that high A to AA range.
High A to AA. Okay.
I mean, he still hasn't played a full minor league season, so we're going to have to bring him along. But I'll tell you, our general philosophy is to challenge our players because we want them to be, playing against players that challenge them and make them better, right? So once he shows that he is better than this level, like boom, we're going to move him along, right? So there's no limiting factor on him, but I would guess more in the high A to AA before AAA.
All right. How about Yusniel Diaz, picked up in the Machado trade from the Dodgers? Dodgers gave him a huge signing bonus. Is he a guy that could play at the AAA level this year and be close if he's having a good season at AAA?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. I mean, he's going to probably go and compete for a job at the major league level, and he doesn't get that. Yeah, I would imagine it would be AAA to start.
The couple pitchers that back during the 19th season that were doing so well in the minor leagues, like Michael Baumann, Zach Lowther, where do you see them this year?
I would be a similar to Diaz, I would say. I mean, they're gonna battle for a job, and if they don't get it, they'll probably wind up in AAA. Would be my guess.
All right. One last player, and then we'll let you get out of here because we really do appreciate your time. We know you're busy getting ready for things. Gunnar Henderson. I hear some amazing things about Gunnar, so I'm not really asking you where he's going to play this year, but just what the ceiling level is for a player of his ability.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this kid. I've known him a long time, since he's been in high school, and he's just an incredible hard worker, and he doesn't back down from challenges, and he's just extremely motivated. So we've got that going for us. And then also, like fantastic athlete who he has just the ceiling through the roof. We were able to have him at the alternate site for a little while this year. He rose to that challenge. He struggled early on against basically major league to AAA pitching, which you would expect an 18, 19-year-old kid to do.
Right.
And then did well, by the last half of the time he was there, which was so cool to see. And then he came down to the instructional league and, was one of the leaders there and played very well. What's really intriguing about Gunnar is he's a big guy, but he's very athletic and could play just about anywhere on the field. I say this with all honesty. If we needed him to play center field, I think he could do it. And so that's
He's that
really
good an athlete. He's that good an
correct.
athlete.
Yeah, and like we had him play out there, and it was very natural for him. So that, along with just his sheer size and power and ability to go opposite field, he's really exciting. He's so young. So we've got time for him to develop and work on some of the areas he needs to work on, and the sky's kind of the limit for him.
All right. We appreciate it. I could ask you about 50 other players.
1,000 questions.
We'd take 3
I
hours.
know.
If this season, Matt, can I ask you one last thing? If this season gets underway and it's fairly normal, can we get you back on sometime in midsummer?
Anytime. You just let me know. I'd love to hang out with you guys.
Matt, can I ask one question?
Go ahead.
It's
Hey,
killing me.
I'm here. You got me. Whatever you want to ask.
Okay, no, I was fortunate to be in baseball for, almost 50 years. And I got to see, young players, Ken Griffey Jr., Edgar Martinez. I was with the Giants for 16 years and saw Lincecum, Posey, Bumgarner, Cano, all these different guys, Pedro Martinez, Bert Blyleven. I played against Bert Blyleven in Vita Blue. Obviously, these guys were great players, some Hall of Famers. Seeing them at a young age, and you've seen guys at young ages. Who in the Orioles organization are the difference maker? Who is that one guy, or maybe there's more than one? Who's that one guy that it can be a Edgar Martinez or Bumgarner? Or
Who's the Hall of Famer?
You can't say who's the Hall of Famer, but who's that guy that you see that the ball sounds different off the bat? The guy's got the delivery and the ball jumps out of his hand. Who is that guy in the Oriole organization?
Well,
it's hard. I know it's hard.
Well, I'm not going to say any surprise names. If you look at our prospect rankings, like most of them are going to be near the top. I'm a big fan of a lot of players in our system. I think our system is extremely deep, talented, and there's going to be some surprises. I'm going to tell you, there's going to be some surprises, some names that maybe aren't as popular that are going to make it to the major leagues, and they're going to provide value. And so those guys to me are just as exciting as some of these that you're talking about. Guys like Joey Ortiz, and people don't really know much about Joey Ortiz, but I'm a big believer in Joey Ortiz. But if you want to talk about that, obviously Adley Rutschman has skills and tools to be a long-time major league player, highly productive major league player. I think Gunnar could be the same, with his ability. And then on the mound, our two big horses are just incredibly talented guys with
Grayson and DL.
With Grayson and DL.
Yeah.
But don't sleep on Michael Baumann and Kyle Bradish. He was highly impressive at the alternate site, and there's a lot of depth and talent. That's Mike Elias is just an incredible accumulator of talent. That's just what he's so good at, and you're seeing that in just the depth that this system has gotten over the last year and a half. If you just look over the last year and a half, how much more talent he's brought in, and that's fantastic for the future of the Orioles.
Matt Blood, Director of Player Development for the Baltimore Orioles. We really appreciate your joining us tonight. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Matt. It was great. I really appreciate it. It's great to hear from you.
Thank you.
For Ross Grimsley, I'm Stan the Fan. Reminder that Pressbox Live has been brought to you by C3 American Exteriors. Go to their website at c3america.com. You get a brand new roof for just the cost of your insurance deductible. I'll be back Wednesday night with Gary Stein, and our guest will be Towson University Athletic Director Tim Leonard. Again, thanks to Matt Blood for his time tonight. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Matt.